The scripture reading this Easter morning is from the Gospel of John, the 20th chapter, first 18 verses. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went to the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" And she said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So the story begins, and it's early in the morning while it's still dark. So this got me thinking about darkness and how darkness indeed affects us all. And sometimes it's pretty surprising how being in the dark impacts you. It does all kinds of things to your body and to your brain. And science suggests that darkness can make us more likely to lie and to cheat, more likely to cause us to make mistakes at work or in our relationships. And darkness makes us see things that we don't normally see. What do we do in the dark? We stumble sometimes, we get lost. It startles us, and in the brain it changes our chemistry, and it heightens our person's perspective of anxiety. So I just find it very humorous that recently the word of the day in my daily calendar was nyctophobia, which is fear of the darkness. It was dark on that Easter morning, and that means the resurrection occurred while it was dark. I read sometime in the pre-dawn hours on that Sunday morning, a great mystery transpired in secret. No sunlight illumined the event, no human being witnessed it, and now even 2,000 years later, no human narrative can contain it. It exceeds all of our attempts to pin it down because it's a mystery known only to God. Whatever the resurrection was and is, its fullness lies in holy darkness, shielded from our eyes. And all we can know is that somehow, in that ancient tomb, God worked in secret to bring life out of death. When it's dark outside, it's hard to be sure what you're seeing. Peter, he sees an empty tomb and runs away. The beloved disciple sees, believes, though does not comprehend. And Mary sees, and she weeps. Three key characters in our faith story, three different responses to God who brings light out of darkness, life out of death. Now, several years ago, Karen and our middle school youth group went on a summer camping trip to northwest Georgia. And one of the things they did was spelunking, which is in the United States and Canada known as cave exploring. Now, it's called potholing in the UK and in Ireland, just to know we're inclusive. And they were told to wear a bunch of old clothes because they were going to get dirty. And they were to bring a flashlight. And that would enable them to keep their hands out. So Karen had to buy one of those very little cute devices that goes around your head to help her guide her in the dark. And the leaders of the little excursion let the group explore for a while. Then they gathered them all together and in the cave, and they sat down and they talked about darkness and light. And make the point, they asked all the folks to turn off their lights in the cave. And when the last light was extinguished, it was completely dark. Karen said, it was so dark that I could not even see my hand in front of my face. Complete darkness. And what the interesting thing she said was, I kept looking for the light. And one of the things about being in darkness is that your eyes will always search for the light. The resurrection makes it easier to find the light for us. And that's the amazing thing. When darkness is interrupted, like today, Easter morning, with an explosive recognition of the resurrection, God who spoke light into existence with the words, "Let there be light," has raised the one whom we declare is the light of the world, the light of our lives. So we have much to celebrate this Easter morning. We celebrate the triumph of the resurrection, life over death, particularly as we wander out of the darkness of a pandemic into light. Because He lives, we live. And the risen Lord has opened for us and for everyone the path to life. We celebrate the triumph of the resurrection, life over death, even as war rages some 5,600 miles away in Ukraine. We surround the victims, the refugees, the medical profession, the responders, and those who fight against tyranny and oppression with the light that will not be overcome with darkness. We celebrate the triumph of the resurrection, life over death, as we struggle with our own cultural problems with increased gun violence in our streets and subways and gathering places, addiction and depression, and the need to seriously address the complex, multifaceted problem and the socio-cultural factors affecting these issues. We celebrate the triumphant resurrection of Jesus Christ, life over death. God calls us to be the light that shines in the darkness. So we celebrate this day the triumph of the resurrection, life over death, for those of us who are grieving at the loss of someone they loved, for someone who is ill, for a friend who is dying, for those who mourn. The good news of the day is the resurrection happened. Because He lives, life worth living prevails. And that's what happens when ordinary people just like you and me brush up against an extraordinary, loving, and merciful God. Life's worth living. One preacher wrote, "I'm finding it increasingly true that clarity, hope, and healing comes when I am willing to linger in hard and barren places where the usual platitudes fall flat and the easy answers prove inadequate." Jesus comes in the darkness, and sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to recognize him. He doesn't look the way I expect him. He doesn't let me cling to my old ideas, and he disappears just as I'm about to grab hold of him. But he comes, he calls my name, and in that instant, I recognize both myself and him. Life worth living prevails. And we all have profoundly individual and unique opportunities, encounters with Christ. And what matters is finding in that empty tomb the hope you will need for whatever is going on in your life. Your own struggles, your losses, your traumas, and your disappointments. Because in receiving new life of Easter, Christ is present, dwelling in you. Today, tomorrow, and always. Even when you don't recognize him, or you see without seeing, the risen Christ remains close by. Ever so close. So God's love shines outward on this Easter morning. And the resurrection gives us, each of us, the possibility to live our lives as authentic expressions of who we are created to be. Discerning and prophetic, prayerful and playful, purposeful and passionate. We are people fueled with a love that has no boundaries, a love that will not let death or darkness overcome it. So friends, enjoy the rest of this day. In fact, enjoy every day and enjoy each other. Be open and alive to what is possible. We invite you to use the full capacities of your resources, of your being, to serve the Lord and embody and practice and principle who Christ is. Love one another as Christ loves. And remember, always remember, there is a time to test and a time to trust. Today is a time to trust. The Lord has risen. The Lord has risen indeed.